Welcome back to Cyber Aces. This is Module 1 Windows. This is our last session in this Module 1, our operating systems, for Windows as well as the entirety of Module 1. This is Session 9, Services and Processes. I am your host, Tim Medine. We've got, this is the end, as we mentioned, of our introduction to operating systems. After this session, we will continue with networking. So join us for the networking module. Following the networking module, we have system administration and scripting. As we mentioned, this is the last session for our Windows portion, services and processes. And without further ado, let's begin. Windows services are going to run in the background. We learned about something similar on the Linux side. We commonly call those daemons or daemons. You'll also hear those referred to as services as well. These are going to run in the background, and users do not interact with these services. These services can be configured to start automatically. We'll see the different startup options in just a little bit. We can configure these services with the services.msc snap-in. Alternatively, we can use the command line to manage these services. Again, the command line is important because it means we're more easily able to script and automate. Whereas with the GUI, it's fine for onesie, twosie changes, but if we want to make any sort of mass changes or script any changes, the GUI interface is just simply not going to be useful for that task. The services have different startup options. We can have automatic. With automatic, the service is going to start when we boot the operating system. We also have automatic delayed. So it's going to start automatically when the system boots. It's just going to wait a little bit. The nice thing with this is it takes the pressure off, takes the load off of the boot time. I remember years ago, we didn't have this delayed option. Now, all of these services would attempt to start at the same time because there was no other option. If we needed it started at boot, we set it to automatic and it started. And these would all sort of thrash when we first booted this system. When Vista and later came out, we added this additional delayed option, so it takes a little bit of the strain off at boot time. Other options are manual. It means that the service will not start automatically, but we can start the service if we need to. Disabled prevents the service from running. Even if we try to start this service, we will be unable to. We need to switch the startup option to manual or one of the automatic options in order to run the service. To interact with these services, we of course can use the GUI, but we can use the command line as well. We can use the SC command. The SC is short for Services Controller. We can use SC query. In fact, I encourage you, grab your Windows VM that you've built and walk through these commands on your Windows system. Grab the notes from cyberaces.org and walk through each of these. So if we run SC query, we're going to see all of the services. If we want to look at a specific service, we can use SC query and then specify the name of the service. The important thing to note, this is the service name, not the display name. There are two different names for the service. The display name for the spooler is print spooler, whereas the name is spooler. To list the services, if we use SC query, that's actually going to show us only the running services. I actually lied to you a little bit earlier for the sake of brevity. SC query will only show us the running. If I want to see the not running services, I can use SC query state equals space inactive. That spacing is very important. If you put the space on the wrong side of the equal sign, it's not going to work. If you skip the space, it will not work. That syntax is a little bit funky, but it is what we have to do. If we want to see all services running and not running, we can say SC query state equals all. If I want to query the configuration or use the QC option, I can say SC QC spooler, and I can see the configuration for that specific service. I can see the binary and other configuration options. To start and stop the service, I can use SC start and then the service name, or SC stop and the service name. The snap-in looks like this. This is the GUI interface. We have selected, in this picture, we've selected the print spooler. Here we can see the difference between the display name and that service name. We can also see the startup type in the middle and then the options to start and stop the service. We can actually, outside of this, the properties for my print spooler, I can start, stop, restart the service, as well as we can see by the toolbar at the top. To disable a service, I can use the scconfig. Now, scconfig is going to change or modify the configuration. So scconfig, then the service name, and in this case, I'm going to say start equal disabled. This is going to disable the service. Once again, the spacing here is important. I do have to use the equals, then a space, then disabled. Similarly, if I want to turn it to auto, I can say start equals space auto. Again, that space is critically important or else it will not work. Time for a review. Which of the following commands can be used to determine the full path and parameters that are used to start the web client service? There's your options, so look through those and select the correct answer. Question 2. There are many ways to start and stop services on Windows. Which of the following commands is not a valid way to start the web client service? We haven't talked through all these options, so we need you to try these out. See which one works and which ones do not work. So pause here and then come back when you're ready. Answer time. Which of the following commands can be used to determine the full path and parameters that are used to start the web client service? SCQC web client. Remember, QC here is short for query configuration. That's going to show us all sorts of information, including the full path to the executable. There are many ways to start and stop the service. Which of the options we showed you on the previous page will not start the web client service? The answer here is service web client start. All the other commands will start the web client service. Okay, time for an exercise. So make sure you've got your virtual machine handy. We've got a number of tasks for you to perform. So we want you to figure out what is the name of the plug and play service. The plug and play is the display name. What is the name? You can look at the GUI if you want to complete the following tasks. Bonus points if you use just the command line to identify it. Once we have the service name, let's stop the service, then disable the service, then attempt to start the service. Of course, we can't start it because it's disabled. Then enable the service and then start the service. Now, to perform these tasks, you will need an elevated shell to do this, an elevated command prompt. So search for CMD, right click, click Run as Administrator, then when prompted for UAC, click Yes. When you do this, your prompt should say Administrator at the top in the title bar. So stop now before and go through this exercise, attempt to solve these challenges, and then when you're ready, come back. Let's walk through the answers now. The plug and play service name is plug play. You could use the Service Control Manager GUI to see this, but we could also use the SC query and then scroll through the list and then identify the name of this particular service. Once we have the name, we can use the following commands to perform the actions we want to. First, to stop the service, SC stop plug play. Disable the service, SC config plug play start equal space disabled. Again, the equal space is important. We can then try to start the service, SC start plug play. Of course, that's going to give us an error. We are unable to start a disabled service. So let's switch the service back to its original option, demand, using the command on the screen, and then we can start the service with SC start plug play. So those were services. Now let's take a look at applications. These are going to be processes that the user is going to interact with. Services aren't allowed to have direct user interaction. So we're going to have something else if we want to have the user interact with the service. So we'll have our application which may talk to the service on our behalf. We can also look at the processes that are running. This will be processes including applications and services. We can look at the processes with a task list. Of course, we can kill with task kill. We can also use WMIC or WMIC to look at this information as well. So the nice thing with, again, these command line is it allows scripting. We can list processes from the command line and we can kill processes from the command line. The nice thing again with this scripting is it gives me more speed and it gives me the ability to automate. Whereas with the GUI, it's going to be slower and it's going to be much more manual. I can't repetitively complete a specific task. To list processes, I'm going to use task list. To find all instances of a specific process by name, I can use task list /fi image name equals calc.exe. This is, of course, is going to find all my calculators. Of course, I have to wrap this in quotes because of the spaces. If I want to kill by process ID, I can use task kill and then PID, that stands for process ID, and then the associated process ID. Or I could say process ID equals EQ and use the FI for my filter. I can manage processes with WMIC. So WMIC is short for the Windows Management and Instrumentation. The C is the console. We call this WMIC for short. I've also heard people call it WMIC. I prefer WMIC, so that's what we're going to use here. To create a process, I can use WMIC process call create. In this case, we're going to use calc.exe. I can list processes with WMIC process list brief. I can then filter, for example, let's say I want to filter for calc. I can add this where clause where the name equals calc. And I've got different options here. I can list brief, I can list full, or I can get the entire command line. So different view options. If I want to kill the process with WMIC, I can use delete. Now you've probably noticed that the syntax here with WMI isn't the most beautiful thing. What makes up for it is with WMIC, we can run remotely. So what I could do now is I could run this on remote systems if I use the /node option. So for example, I can say /node and specify the name of a server or the IP address. And assuming I've got the proper permissions on that host, I can start, stop, kill processes on that target system. Even cooler is if I give it a list. So in our example here, I've got at list.txt. And if my list has a list of server names and or IP addresses, it will now run this command on all of those systems, which is a very powerful tool for automation. If I want to use a different user, I can use those same options and then specify the username and password with /user : and then the username and /password : and then the password. If I want to use a domain user, the user will be domain \user. We can schedule applications to run, so we can schedule specific tasks to run at different times. Of course, we can use the GUI to do this, the task scheduler. From the command line, we can schedule tasks as well. We can use the scatasks that we typically call it for short, or @. Now, the more recent versions of Windows have deprecated @, so we'll look at scatasks. Scatasks allows us to create, remove, modify, and run scheduled tasks. Now this command line, the options here are rather complicated, but the great thing is it is very, very flexible. So it gives me a lot of options here to schedule tasks. I can schedule the time, I can schedule it to run as a different user, I could schedule it to run as system. Very, very powerful options here. All right, time for an exercise. An attacker launches a new CMD process on your box every few minutes. So the attacker has a shell. That's not good news, right? We want to stop the bad guy. What we need you to do is kill the CMD processes opened to defend your system. So what we need to do is open a command prompt and note its process ID. Now open a couple more. The goal here is to kill those CMDs, those other two, but not kill your own. Now I would encourage you, write this command in a notepad or something else, because you might make a mistake your first time and kill your own CMD, and you don't want to have to retype that command, especially because that syntax can be a little bit brutal. So question 2, or challenge 2 rather, you have a nasty piece of malware on your system. The malware has a process ID naming BD01.exe, BD02, and BD03. Every single time you kill a process, 2 more appear. Oh no! All of the malware is named BD followed by a number. How could you kill all of these processes at the same time? You can simulate this by copying calc or CMD to your desktop and renaming it to BD01, 02, and 03. Of course, we don't need to worry about the restarting of others. Just create a couple and attempt to kill them all at the same time. A hint here, the percent is the wild card with WMIC. So stop here, pause this presentation and go through those challenges. And when you're ready, resume the presentation and we will continue on with our solutions for the answers. Yours might look very different from what we have. The first challenge was to kill all of the CMDs except our own. So we can have a filter that looks something like this with WMIC. So WMIC process where the name is CMD, but the process is not our process ID. So it would keep ours running, but kill all of the others at the same time. Question 2, we wanted to kill everything that looked like BD. So we can use a filter that looks like the option we have here, name equals BD percent. This percent is used as the wild card and will then match anything starting with BD. This concludes Module 1, our Windows portion. It wraps up our services and processes. This also wraps up the entirety of our Module 1, our Introduction to Operating Systems. I presume you went through the Linux portion first, and that is complete. Our Windows portion is now also complete. In the next session, we're going to start, or continue rather, with networking. We'll see you then.